As we celebrate Guyana's 50th anniversary as a sovereign state, it is surely an opportunity to reflect on the journey traveled, celebrate our collective achievements, and look at the way forward over the next 50 years. So this week on Guyana 411, we explore four areas. What are we? What has been our journey? What can we become? And how do we get there? This is Guyana 411, and I am Sinika Thorne. Thank you for joining us. What does it mean to be Guyanese? The answer to this could be very complex. The Guyanese society is made up of several peoples, and so therefore we have several identities. But in the melting pot of this land we call home, we have been able to fashion a Guyanese identity.
The Guyanese identity is diverse and reflects traces of the Amerindians, Europeans, Africans, Indians, Portuguese, and Chinese. Dr. David Hines, Guyanese, and an associate professor of African and African Caribbean Studies at the Arizona State University, explains.
You see it sometimes in the cricket field when Guyana and the West Indies is playing, and then you see a Chandrapal becomes a Guyanese. He's not an Indian Guyanese, because you see cricket is a sport of resistance and a sport of overcoming, and so therefore all ethnicities are part of that overcoming and that resistance, and so therefore the Guyanese and the Caribbeans come to life.
African, Indian, Portuguese, Chinese, European, Amerindian all dissolve to Guyanese. Therefore, it is a combination of race, of cultures, of music and fashion, of religions and history. For Dr. Paloma Mohammed of the University of Guyana, the question of identity is very complex.
This is a very complex country. There is no one identity. No one person has one identity. For instance, you could be a son in one place, a father, a journalist in another place. So we are all made up of multiple identities. And if you expand that to the level of a nation, you actually get a much more complex picture. I think to kind of try and simplify what I think Guyana is a complex set of identities competing for attention and competing for acknowledgement. And I think that for the last 50 years, or even our whole colonial history and post-colonial history, that's what we've been doing. We've been working through those narratives, we've been working through those ideas, working through all those different cultures, histories, personal identities and circumstances in this space that is Guyana, and trying to understand how we all fit in.
Though some will add the prefix Indo or Afro, internationally we are all regarded under a single banner, Guyanese. But our diversity should not be a dividing factor that separates us.
How we speak, because all the other countries, they don't have a twang like us, and most of the times we want to copy their twang, but ours is special, ours is unique, and wherever we go in the world, when we speak, everyone looks at that person and says, look, that's a Guyanese.
I think we share a really great sense of pride. I think also we also share a commitment, a dedication, and that is really inscribed in our constitution, in our coat of arms, all of our national emblems. But it's what we do every day. It's the man in the street pushing a donkey cart, or the man in the street, the vendor street selling, or it defines us in terms of our ability to move around in different spheres.
I think that's one of the most defining things, at least in my experience, about Guyanese people, is that we have been able to tap into that resourcefulness and that we are very resilient. I mean, like some things that happen in the country, even in the environment, even in the times of flood, We see that in the 2005 floods. I served in communities, and I saw where people were so resilient, even after they lost so much, they were still able to build from scratch and to build again. Some are more resilient than others, but I think for a large measure we have proven that we are resilient people.
What it means to be a Guyanese is the fact that I live in 3,000 square miles of pristine, tropical beauty. And this may sound like jargon to people, but trust me, traveling Guyana and working in the media, so I travel Guyana a whole lot. Being able to, for example, go to Maikoni and rock back in a hammock and get fresh air and be able to catch fish and to play saw out, or being able to go to Bartica or to Letem and to be able to get some nibbies done and that kind of thing. That's for me, the simple things in life that matter. The fact also that I can go anywhere in this 83,000 square mile place called Guyana and not feel as if I am not welcomed. One of the things about us as Guyanese is that there's a warmth and there's a friendliness, even if you're a stranger, even if you're a different ethnicity. People see a stranger come to the area, and as long as you're polite, they welcome you and they take care of you.
It's the best citizenship in the world, being Guyanese. Being here, we don't have to worry about unnecessarily about earthquakes and tornadoes and all those things that some other countries have. We are rich in resources. We're getting a better understanding day by day how to manage those resources effectively for citizens. And we are a peace-loving people. At the end of the day, we have had several elections over time. But I think for the general part, we are peace-loving and a hospitable people. We're known as that. And we're coming back to the days when we were known as the breadbasket for the region. So I think all in all, we're a delightful, loving people.
You know you're Guyanese if you know what Olhaig sucks. You know you're Guyanese if you know that an English duck is not an animal or a bird. And you know you're Guyanese if you could suck your teeth and you could cut your eye upon somebody. So it is not just about occupying a common space. It is definitely not about a single religion or color of skin. It is about all our differences and diversity coming together to make us one people, one nation.
Our forefathers entered Guyana with hundreds of thousands of years of history, from conquest to colonization to an independent nation. They fought and died for the right to maintain their culture. We look at a journey that has led to us being Guyanese we are today.
Our ancestry can be traced across 3 continents. Each race, Amerindian, European, African, Portuguese, East Indian, and Chinese, came under different circumstances. In assimilating to their new environment, each added to the potpourri of who we are today. The Amerindians were the first to come to this South American country. From their lifestyle and culture, we have unique phrases and words and even national symbols. The name of our country is rooted in the Amerindian word Wina, which means water or watery country.
The indigenous contribution to Guyana's situation is the mere fact that they understand how to keep the ecosystems in place.
Guyana's infrastructural landscape was shaped under European colonialism. The names of our villages, the designs of our buildings, drainage and irrigation systems are vestiges of the Dutch, French, and English that ruled. Even our legislature and justice systems are reflections of colonial rule. Colonial Guyana's economy relied predominantly on agriculture to sustain it. While there was tobacco and cotton production, sugar and later rice became the main exports. It was the Europeans who brought African slaves to sustain their agricultural productions. The Africans brought with them a culture rich in folklore and religion. Efforts by the Europeans to dominate the slaves led to the creation of a Dutch Creole language as the different slaves adapted to each other. With the introduction of other races, the Guyanese Creole language was created. The Creolese language, which closely resembles English, is considered a unique cultural Guyanese product. There was also a blending of religions. Europeans introduced Christianity to both the Amerindians and Africans. Obia is a blend of various African beliefs. When slavery was abolished in 1834, came the Portuguese, East Indians, and lastly the Chinese indentured laborers. Each indentured group brought with them their culture and beliefs, which were later integrated into the existing tapestry of an already mixed people.
We know what our ancestors knew, what was freedom and what was bondage. And out of that came not a rebellious spirit, but a spirit of resistance. So you'll find our ancestors from Africa, from India, have a spirit of resistance. As I said, don't let's mix it with a rebellious spirit, but a resistance.
Throughout slavery and after, many of the groups were educated by Christian missionaries and small private schools. The expansion in education was encouraged by the British government to meet the demands of the civil service by the emancipated Africans in particular. There was more expansion in education during 1844 to 1876, during which Queen's College, Bishop's High School, and the St. Stanislaus College were established. As they became more politically and socially aware, Guyanese began to struggle for their independence. This was further shaped by a growing labor movement that demanded better working conditions.
It is against this background that gave rise to the labor movement in our country in the 1940s and 50s, with the advent of great leaders like Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow, Cherry Jagan, Forbes Burnham, Ashton Chase, U.C. Guyana, Brunley Bunn, C.V. Nunes, and many others, too numerous to mention. Labor combined with the political movement and an awakened consciousness of the working people, coupled with an international movement of colonies fighting for independence.
Independence was an opportunity to unify a diverse group of people, explains Dr. David Hines, professor of Caribbean and African Diaspora Studies.
And so therefore we come to independence, Indians and Chinese and Portuguese and so forth. Now all the time this is happening, the groups are developing sense of themselves, but also developing a sense of others, right? And we're developing myths about others. The nature of colonialism pitted us against each other. And so therefore we develop these myths about it. Now, independence now means that we should free ourselves from those myths.
The creation of a Guyanese identity was not only shaped by the internal struggles of different people, but also by conflict with its neighbor. The Guyana-Venezuela border dispute began in 1840 and continues to this day. Over the years, we've seen Guyanese put aside their differences in defense of our sovereignty against Venezuela's spurious claims. Although our journey was diverse, we all faced adversity which helped craft our unique identity. Now, 50 years later, on our Jubilee Independence anniversary, we explore once again what we can become in the next 50 years.
When Guyana gained independence in 1966, it was viewed as one of the newly independent states of the West Indies that would go on to prosperity. The rich mineral resources of our country, the large section of arable land, a young population eager to work and develop this country. All of these could be exploited to make Guyana one of the most prosperous countries.
Guyana's ability to feed the Caribbean is not a dream. The arable land along the large section of our coastal plain makes it possible for us to grow a variety of crops. For centuries, we've been producing rice, sugar, and cash crops, both for domestic consumption and for export. The emphasis now is on adding value to the basic produce.
Our agricultural production our ability to export is hinged on either going into niche markets. We could perhaps look at organic production, or we can perhaps look at producing rice and demerara sugar or something for the Toronto, New York, those niche markets. Or we can piggyback on other exports. If Brazil is exporting soybeans, say, from their operations in Boavista to America, and we're producing soybean, well, we can join production and export our soybean through that means. If they're coming through one way, we can go the other way to supply them with commodities. You see, we have to think in that way.
Apart from adding value to crops produced along the coastland, attention is also on developing agriculture in the hinterland, given the coastland's susceptibility to climate change.
Guyana, last year, within a period of 30 days between June and July, Guyana experienced the highest rainfall ever recorded in the history of the nation. On one occasion, there was 10.5 inches in 13 hours, and in the other, there was 8.5 inches in 24 hours. The result of this was massive flooding across the coast, and Guyana and Georgetown, of course, suffered tremendously, largely because the drainage system in Guyana is limited to between 1.5 and 2 inches in 24 hours. As you can see, any rainfall above that will have catastrophic cause a tremendously bad situation for the country. Guyana therefore has to look in the medium to long term in moving its agricultural base from the coastland into the interior, where the higher ground is. The two main areas for new development will be the intermediate savannas, which is just behind the coast, and the Rupununi savannas. The Rupununi Region 9 being the largest area, the largest region in Guyana.
Agriculture is not the only sector that can drive prosperity for Guyana and Guyanese. Announcement of a significant oil find in Guyana's exclusive economic zone holds tremendous potential to transform the country's economy.
Why do I say that in the next 50 years we could do all of this? We live in the hope that we could become an oil and gas producing state, that we could have more revenues coming from the wealth of our country, which is our national assets, our natural resources, where we could manage our green, untapped, virgin forestry, and we could produce oxygen for the rest of the world, and that we could be compensated for our supply of oxygen to save this planet. We would be respected for having the world's largest, perhaps one of the world's largest natural resort, forestry resort, like Iwokrama, a bigger Iwokrama that we could use to do all kind of laboratory testing of species that would be good for medicines and would be good for all manners of cures of people facing health issues.
The potential to create a vibrant service sector capable of providing services to the European market is also being examined. This is in addition to creating a thriving business sector that could be built through entrepreneurship, drawn especially from our youths. In all of this, the ability to move goods and connect people across all 10 administrative regions must become easier, so that growth and development does not benefit one section of the population.
We envisage bridging the Demerara, a new fixed structure in the Demerara. We're talking about a new road, a roadway connecting from Sand Hill, going all the way to linking back up to that same Perica Goshen Road. I mean, it's all nice virgin land. We're talking about Molson Creek to Oriala to Molson Creek work. We're talking about redevelopment of Stellens. I mean, I have a proposal which I'm going to send to cabinets, and about redevelopment of both the Freedom Hoop and the Georgetown Stellen. I mean, that is prime land, prime commercial land. What we're supposed to be doing is not just anchoring ships there. We're supposed to be doing in any other country that has been riverside property with commercial venues and those things like that. I have a proposal. As you see it now, it's not the final thing. It should. I have a proposal on doing some boardwalks in the seawalls area. You know what I mean, which is both will
Nice.
help with our sea defense work, but as well as make a space for people on Sundays. You know what I mean. So therefore, I mean, it's done. It's quite easily done. So 2020, we should have a transformed city and a transformed country.
Our ability to diversify our agriculture sector, exploit our mineral resources, add value to our primary commodities will all require a skilled and educated workforce.
I'm really giving myself, maybe 2 or 3 years in the ministry to achieve some of these things that I have set out in my opening days. And I really feel that, as I say, all my colleagues in the cabinet are depending on our succeeding in the Ministry of Education. Because, frankly, if we don't succeed in the Ministry of Education, no other ministry can succeed in what they're attempting to do. Education is so central to absolutely everything that we attempt to do in the government that we dare not fail.
Even as we diversify our economy, care must be taken to ensure that it is sustainable. It is in this context that the government has proposed a green economy.
Bartica is to become our first green town. Bartica is going to lead the way in solar energy. It's going to lead the way in electrical vehicles. It's going to lead the way in wind energy. It's going to lead the way in solid waste management. It's going to lead the way in recycling. Bartica is going to become a laboratory for Guyana's green economy. I would like to see students from all over the country. I'd like to see residents of other countries coming to Bartica to learn how to be green. Every school, every hospital, every police station, every government building has to move quickly over the next 4 years to adopting sustainable sources of energy, renewable energy. No more addiction to gasoline and dieseline. We're moving to clean energy.
There is no doubt that Guyana have a bright and prosperous future. But how do we get there? What will it take for us to achieve our full potential?
One of the key elements in creating a prosperous Guyana is that of unity. For too long, political and other divides have been allowed to stymie our development. Even as we acknowledge our ethnic diversity, our future lies in us trying to attain the aspirations as stated in our national motto: one people, one nation, one destiny. If Guyana is to prosper so that Guyanese can prosper in their homeland, there must be a policy of inclusivity.
Your government will introduce measures to promote social cohesion and protect vulnerable groups. We shall work towards healing the rifts between social groups in this country. We shall re-establish cordial relations with civil society, religious organizations, and trade unions. We have the responsibility to restore the integrity and viability of working peoples and non-governmental organizations, which have been gravely undermined. Guyana cannot become one nation if gross disparities persist between the hinterland and the coastland, between the educated few and a semi-literate mass, and between the very rich and the very poor. We shall foster the growth of a united nation in which cooperation prevails over confrontation. Your government will undertake to ensure equitable access of all Guyanese, whether they live on the coastland or the hinterland, or whether they are poor or rich.
Another key element for the creation of a prosperous Guyana is good governance. This means that our people must be assured of equality before the law, that laws must be fair and just, and provide protection especially for the poor and vulnerable in our society. It means that the separation of powers must be respected.
Negotiation has to be the tool to skillfully carve out from the almost impregnable fortress of parochial and partisan political interests the broader outlines of nation building. The benefits to be derived from such a platform of unity are far-reaching and deeply impactful. Consider what it means if we all work towards equal rights and representation at all levels for all citizens, regardless of ethnicity, gender, age, or geography. Preservation and application of fundamental human rights for all, triumph of the rule of law, adherence to the separation of powers, open governance that prioritizes citizen participation, accommodation, and sound ethical conduct of persons in public life.
Security of our nation and of our citizens is also key in the development of a prosperous society. Not only must we secure our borders from aggressors, but we must also develop systems that allow our people to enjoy their prosperity.
We have managed through President Granger to ensure that the British are back. And the British are back through the group called Olive Group, and they are going to ensure that we make all of it. In relation to trafficking in persons, we are going to get the Interpol coming. The Interpol was here, they came in, and they're doing a basic needs assessment study. Interpol, the drug enforcement agency which was kept at bay such a long time by that administration when it was, by the opposition when in government, they are there now. They're there now, and they're giving us as much support as is possible. But of course, crime in a society like Guyana, which has been, up and up and up for a long, long time now, is not going to be reduced drastically overnight. A lot of things have to be done, and a lot of things are being done.
When we think of a prosperous Guyana, it must not be just for us, this present generation. It must be for generations to follow. Our prosperity must be built on sustainable economic activities that care for our environment, that eliminate poverty, and is non-discriminatory, and offers a good life for all.
We have to be innovative in our approach and bold in our measures if we are to build an economy that stands on a foundation of granite. It is our view that the agenda for 2016 provides the building blocks for a resilient economy capable of withstanding global shocks and climate change. The agenda also establishes a pathway for our people to face the future with renewed hope and confidence. We must return to being proud Guyanese, living in a country of unity, security, and prosperity. At the time of celebration of the next quinquagenary of our independence, we must have built a country that ranks among the pantheons of high-income countries, a shining example of unity and diversity, with our people being at peace with themselves, enjoying the good life.
That concludes today's edition of Guyana 411. The details of these and other stories can be found on GINA's website. We encourage you to subscribe to our website and YouTube channel. You can also like and follow us on Facebook to be updated as the news unfolds. Do continue to enjoy the Independence Jubilee celebration. It goes on until the end of this year. Stay connected to GINA as we bring you updates on the activities and other government programs and policies implemented throughout the rest of the year. Do join us again next week for another edition of Guyana 411.